My beloved friend, let me tell you this gently, plainly, and with truth that has survived storms. Peace is not something you find. Peace is something you choose. You do not wake up angry by accident. You wake up carrying yesterday's wounds into today's sunrise. And anger, anger is a heavy suitcase to drag through a life meant for dancing. Now listen closely. Not everyone who speaks to you is speaking about you. Not every shadow thrown across your joy belongs to your body, and not every noise deserves your silence or your reaction. Anger is an invitation, not an obligation. Anger knocks on your door every day. It comes dressed as disrespect. It comes wearing the face of misunderstanding. It arrives through careless words and unhealed people. But hear this. You do not have to answer every knock. Some people throw stones not because you are wrong, but because they cannot reach your light. And when you allow their hands to guide your emotions, you give strangers the keys to your inner house. Why would you do that? Peace is not something that slips into your life when everyone finally behaves the way you want them to. Peace is not a reward handed out by a quiet world or polite people. Peace is a decision you make long before the noise begins. It is a choice you carry inside you like a lamp, glowing even when the room goes dark. Anger often arrives pretending to be righteous. It tells you that you have been wronged, disrespected, overlooked, or misunderstood. It whispers that you must respond immediately or risk losing your dignity. But anger, my friend, is a fast talker and a poor guide. It rushes you toward words you cannot retrieve and actions you must later explain. Peace, on the other hand, walks slowly. It asks you to pause. It invites you to breathe. It reminds you that your worth is not fragile and does not need defending at every turn. You see, peace is not passive. It is not surrender. It is not silence born of fear. Peace is an active, courageous stance. It is standing in the middle of provocation and saying, I know who I am and I will not abandon myself to prove it. When you choose peace, you are not saying the situation is acceptable. You are saying your spirit is not available for damage. Every day, life will test this choice. Someone will speak carelessly. Someone will question your intentions. Someone will try to pull you into their storm and convince you it is your responsibility to get wet. In those moments, anger rises quickly because it feels familiar. Many of us were taught that anger is power, that raising our voices is the only way to be heard, that reacting fiercely is the same as standing up for ourselves. But power that depends on losing control is not power at all. It is bondage wearing a loud disguise. Peace asks something different of you. It asks you to trust yourself enough not to react instantly. It asks you to believe that your value does not shrink when you remain calm. It asks you to remember that you are allowed to step back, to choose clarity over chaos, dignity over drama. Peace says you do not have to attend every argument you are invited to. And that refusal is not weakness, it is wisdom. Choosing peace does not mean you will never feel anger. Anger is a human emotion as natural as joy or sorrow. But peace means anger no longer drives the car. You may feel it rise in your chest, warm and insistent, but you do not hand it the steering wheel. You acknowledge it, learn from it, and then gently set it aside. You understand that feelings are messengers, not masters. There is a quiet freedom that comes when you stop letting other people decide how you feel. When you realize that your mood does not have to change because someone else is having a bad day. When you understand that disrespect does not require a reaction to be proven real. The moment you stop reacting automatically, you reclaim something precious, your agency. Your life becomes less about what happens to you and more about how you choose to respond. Peace is choosing to breathe before you speak. It is choosing to listen without preparing your defense. It is choosing to walk away without slamming the door, because you know silence can be a full sentence. Peace is recognizing that some battles cost more than they are worth and your energy is too sacred to be spent on every skirmish. This choice will not always be easy. There will be days when peace feels heavy, when anger seems lighter, quicker, more satisfying. But that satisfaction is brief and bitter. Peace lasts longer. Peace settles into your bones. Peace teaches your nervous system that it is safe to rest. And from that rest, clarity grows. When you choose peace repeatedly, something beautiful happens. People lose their power to provoke you. Situations that once stole your sleep begin to shrink. You start responding from intention rather than impulse. And slowly you become someone who is not easily shaken. Not because life stopped being difficult, but because you stopped letting difficulty define you. Peace is a practice. You choose it in small moments, when you decide not to send that angry message, when you pause instead of interrupting, when you let someone else have the last word because you know you don't need it. These small choices accumulate. They build a life that feels steadier, softer, more honest. And one day you will notice that the world has not changed nearly as much as you have. People still speak. Situations still arise. But inside you there is space. There is calm. There is a knowing that no matter what comes, you can meet it without losing yourself. There comes a moment in every life when you realize that carrying the weight of other people's words will bend your back if you let it. Not everything spoken in your direction is aimed at your heart, and not every action taken near you is meant to wound you. When you learn this truth slowly and deeply, you loosen the grip that other people have on your emotions. You begin to understand that much of what feels personal was never about you at all. People speak from the place where they are standing. Some speak from love, some from fear, some from envy, and many from pain they have never named. A person who is hurting often does not say, "I am hurting." Instead, they criticize, they judge, they lash out. And if you are not careful, you will gather their pain into your own chest and carry it as if it belongs to you, but it does not. It never did. When someone misunderstands you, it can feel like an attack on your character. When someone dismisses you, it can feel like a verdict on your worth. Yet misunderstanding is not rejection, and dismissal is not definition. Other people's perceptions are shaped by their experiences, their expectations, and their limitations. They are not mirrors of your truth. They are windows into their world. Taking everything personally is exhausting work. It requires constant defense, constant explanation, constant vigilance. You begin to watch every word you speak and replay every interaction, wondering where you went wrong. But often you did not go wrong at all. You simply crossed paths with someone who was not able to see you clearly, and clarity cannot be forced on eyes that are closed. When you stop taking things personally, you do not become cold or indifferent. You become discerning. You learn to ask, is this truly about me, or is this about what this person is carrying? That question alone can save you hours of anger and years of resentment. It creates space between what is said and what you feel, and in that space peace can breathe. There is great freedom in realizing that you do not have to attend every emotional reaction that comes your way. Someone can be upset without you being at fault. Someone can be disappointed without you being a failure. Someone can be angry without you being wrong. When you understand this, you stop rushing to fix, explain, or defend. You let people have their feelings without turning those feelings into your burden. This does not mean you ignore harm or excuse cruelty. It means you respond with clarity instead of collapse. You address what needs addressing without internalizing what does not belong to you. You stand in your truth without shrinking or hardening. You learn to separate feedback from projection, concern from control, truth from noise. Often, the harshest words spoken to us are echoes of battles we never witnessed. A sharp tone may come from a long day of being unheard. A cruel comment may come from a life of comparison. A dismissive gesture may come from fear of inadequacy. Knowing this does not justify the behavior, but it explains why it should not define you. When you no longer take everything personally, you stop trying to prove yourself to people who are not prepared to understand you. You release the exhausting need to be liked, approved of, or validated by everyone you meet. You recognize that your worth was not granted by their opinion and cannot be revoked by their misunderstanding. This way of seeing requires compassion, especially for yourself. Compassion says, I do not have to bleed because someone else is wounded. It says I can acknowledge pain without adopting it. Compassion allows you to stay open-hearted without becoming open-ended, giving endlessly until there is nothing left. You begin to notice how much lighter life feels when you stop carrying invisible accusations. Conversations become simpler. Silence becomes easier. You no longer rehearse arguments in your head or replay moments you wish you had handled differently. You accept that being human means being imperfect and being misunderstood at times. And you let that be okay. Not taking things personally also teaches you humility. Just as others misread you, you sometimes misread them. This understanding softens your judgments. It reminds you that everyone is learning, everyone is stumbling, everyone is trying to survive the best way they know how. From this place, forgiveness becomes possible, not as a favor to others, but as a release for yourself. When you master this truth, your inner world grows steadier. External opinions lose their grip. Praise does not inflate you, and criticism does not shatter you. You become rooted in something deeper than applause or approval. You become anchored in self-knowledge, and in that anchoring, you discover a quiet strength. The strength to listen without absorbing. The strength to care without collapsing. The strength to remain kind without being consumed. Life still speaks, people still speak, but their words no longer decide who you are. You move through the world with a gentler heart and a stronger spine. You understand that most of what wounds us was never sharpened for us specifically. And with that understanding, you walk on lighter, wiser, and free. There is a quiet courage in walking away that the world rarely applauds. We are taught to believe that strength announces itself loudly, that power must argue, defend, and dominate. Yet there is another kind of strength, one that does not raise its voice or clench its fists. It simply knows when to step back. It knows when to be still. It knows when silence is not surrender but self-respect. Detachment is often misunderstood. People confuse it with coldness, with indifference, with the absence of feeling. But true detachment is born from deep awareness. It is the understanding that you can care without being consumed, that you can love without losing yourself, that you can witness chaos without inviting it to live inside you. Detachment is not the shutting down of the heart, it is the guarding of it. There will be moments when someone demands a reaction from you. They poke, provoke, and persist, hoping to draw you into their unrest. In those moments, silence can feel uncomfortable. It can feel like you are letting something slide, like you are forfeiting your voice. But silence, when chosen consciously, is not absence. It is presence with boundaries. It is saying, I see what is happening, and I choose not to participate in what will harm me. Walking away does not mean you are afraid. Often it means you are aware. Aware that explaining yourself again will not bring understanding. Aware that arguing will not bring peace. Aware that some conversations are not conversations at all, but traps, designed to drain your energy and leave you empty. When you walk away from those moments, you are not losing, you are preserving. There is guilt that often accompanies detachment, a whisper that says you should do more, say more, endure more. That guilt is learned. It comes from a world that rewards self-sacrifice, even when it turns into self-erasure. But you were not born to be endlessly available to what wounds you. You were born to live, to grow, to breathe freely. Protecting your peace is not selfish, it is necessary. Silence can be a sanctuary. In silence, you listen to yourself. You hear the quiet wisdom that gets drowned out by noise and opinion. You begin to recognize which battles are yours and which were never meant for your hands. Silence gives you space to respond instead of react, to choose instead of being pushed. Detachment teaches you discernment. You begin to notice patterns, who listens and who only waits to speak, who respects your boundaries and who resents them. With this awareness, you stop over-explaining. You stop justifying your needs. You stop offering your heart to people who treat it carelessly. This is not bitterness. It is clarity. There is a particular strength in refusing to be pulled into negativity. When you do not mirror anger, it has nowhere to land. When you do not engage in gossip, it loses its fuel. When you do not argue with disrespect, it reveals itself for what it is. Your calm becomes a mirror, and not everyone is ready to see themselves clearly. Walking away is sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself and for others. It prevents you from saying words you cannot take back. It prevents situations from escalating into wounds that take years to heal. It allows time and distance to do what force never could. Growth often requires space, and detachment provides it. This strength grows with practice. At first, silence feels heavy, like unfinished business. But over time, it becomes lighter. You realize how much energy you were spending trying to be understood by people who were not listening. You feel the relief of no longer carrying conversations that were going nowhere. Your spirit begins to rest. Detachment does not mean you stop caring about justice, truth, or connection. It means you choose the manner in which you engage. You speak when your words can build or clarify. You step back when your words would only wound or inflame. You learn that not every truth needs to be spoken immediately, and not every moment requires your voice. In this way, silence becomes intentional. Walking away becomes an act of self-honor. You are no longer proving your strength through endurance alone, but through wisdom. You recognize that your time, your energy, your emotional life are precious resources. You spend them where they can grow something beautiful. And one day you notice the change. You are calmer. Conflicts that once consumed you now pass like weather. You trust yourself enough to know when to stay and when to go. You no longer fear being misunderstood because you understand yourself. This is the strength of silence and detachment. Not an escape from life, but a deeper way of engaging with it. A way that keeps your heart open and your spirit intact. A way that allows you to move through the world with grace, dignity, and an unshakable sense of self. Anger rarely arrives alone. It comes carrying a history, a memory, a bruise that never fully healed. It announces itself loudly, but beneath its noise there is often a quieter voice asking to be seen. When you learn to listen past the heat of anger, you begin to hear the truth it is pointing toward. There is something inside you that is still tender. We are taught to treat anger as an enemy, something to suppress or unleash without thought. Yet anger is neither villain nor hero. It is a signal. It rises when a boundary has been crossed, when a fear has been awakened, when an old wound has been touched. The problem is not that anger appears. The problem is when we mistake it for the whole story. Strong reactions often surprise us. A small comment cuts deeper than it should. A minor inconvenience feels unbearable. In those moments, it is tempting to blame the present situation entirely. But the intensity of the reaction often belongs to the past. The present has merely brushed against a place that was already aching. Unhealed wounds have a way of disguising themselves. They wear the face of irritation, impatience, defensiveness. They convince us that our anger is solely about what just happened. Yet if we pause and look honestly, we may find that the feeling is older than the moment. It may trace back to a time when we were unheard, dismissed, or made to feel small. The body remembers even when the mind tries to forget. This understanding requires courage. It is easier to point outward than to look inward. It is easier to accuse than to reflect. But reflection is where healing begins. When you ask yourself, why did this hurt so much? You open a door. You give yourself permission to meet the part of you that is still waiting for care. Anger often protects pain. It steps forward like a guard saying, do not come closer. And for a long time that protection may have been necessary. There were moments when anger was the only language available to express hurt. But what once protected you can later imprison you if it is never examined. Healing does not mean you will never feel angry again. It means anger no longer controls the narrative of your life. It becomes a visitor, not a resident. You listen to what it has to say, and then you decide how to respond. You do not hand it the pen to write your story. When you recognize that anger points to unhealed wounds, compassion enters the room. Compassion for yourself, first and foremost. You stop shaming yourself for reacting. You stop calling yourself weak or flawed. Instead, you say, something in me needs attention. That shift changes everything. Judgment softens into curiosity, and curiosity opens the way to understanding. This awareness also changes how you see others. When someone reacts with disproportionate anger, you no longer see only the outburst, you sense the wound beneath it. This does not excuse harmful behavior, but it explains why meeting anger with anger rarely heals anything. Pain speaking to pain only creates more noise. Healing requires listening, boundaries, and sometimes distance. There is a deep release that comes when you stop using anger as armor. Armor is heavy. It keeps you guarded, alert, and tense. When you begin to heal, you realize you no longer need to stay braced for impact. You learn to trust your resilience, your ability to respond without exploding or collapsing. Healing asks you to feel what anger has been covering: grief, fear, loneliness, disappointment. These emotions are softer and often scarier than anger, but they are also more honest. Allowing yourself to feel them is not a sign of weakness, it is a return to wholeness. It is choosing to be real rather than reactive. This process takes time. Wounds do not disappear because they are acknowledged once. They heal through patience, through repeated acts of self-care, through honest conversations and quiet reflection. Sometimes they heal through forgiveness, sometimes through boundaries, and sometimes through simply letting yourself rest. As you heal, you notice a change in your reaction. Things that once ignited you now pass with less intensity. You pause more easily. You breathe before speaking. You recognize triggers not as threats, but as reminders to be gentle with yourself. Your nervous system begins to trust that it is safe. And in that safety, anger loses its grip. It no longer needs to shout to be heard. You have learned to listen without being overwhelmed. You have learned that healing is not about becoming emotionless, but about becoming integrated. All parts of you are allowed to exist, but none are allowed to dominate. Understanding anger as a messenger rather than a master transforms your life. It shifts you from reaction to responsibility, from blame to awareness. You stop asking, "Who made me feel this way?" and start asking, "What is this feeling asking me to heal?" There is a quiet authority that enters a room before a single word is spoken. It does not announce itself with noise or demand attention through force. It simply is. This authority belongs to the calmest person present, the one who has learned how to stand steady while others sway. Calm is not the absence of feeling. It is mastery of it, and mastery in any form is power. The world often celebrates the loud, the reactive, the quick to speak and quicker to anger. We are taught to admire those who dominate conversations and overwhelm opposition. But there is a deeper power that outlasts all of that. It is the power of composure. When you are calm, you see clearly. When you see clearly, you choose wisely. And wise choices shape destinies. Calm does not come from avoiding life's storms. It comes from learning how to anchor yourself within them. Anyone can remain peaceful when nothing is happening. True calm is revealed under pressure, when expectations collide, when emotions rise, when voices sharpen. In those moments, calm is not passive, it is deliberate. It is the decision to remain present rather than panicked, grounded rather than scattered. The calmest person in the room is not easily manipulated. They are not rushed into decisions or provoked into reactions. While others are busy defending their pride, the calm person is protecting their clarity. And clarity is the birthplace of power. From clarity comes direction, and from direction comes effective action. When you control your reactions, you reclaim authorship over your life. You stop letting circumstances write your story. You stop handing your emotional pen to strangers, to critics, to chaos. You begin responding from intention rather than impulse. This shift may seem subtle, but it changes everything. A life guided by reaction is exhausting. A life guided by intention is sustainable. Calm also transforms communication. When you speak from calm, your words carry weight. They are not scattered or sharp. They are measured and meaningful. People listen differently to someone who is not trying to overpower them. Calm invites respect because it reflects self-respect. It says, "I trust myself enough not to shout. There is a dignity in calm that cannot be imitated. It comes from knowing who you are without needing constant affirmation. It comes from understanding that your worth does not rise and fall with every opinion. When criticism arrives, calm allows you to evaluate it without being consumed by it. When praise arrives, calm allows you to receive it without becoming dependent on it. You remain balanced, rooted, whole. This power extends inward as well. Calm strengthens your relationship with yourself. You become a safer place to live inside. Your thoughts slow down. Your body relaxes. You are no longer in a constant state of alert, bracing for the next emotional blow. From this inner stability, confidence grows, not the brittle kind that needs applause, but the quiet kind that endures. Calm also gives you endurance. Anger burns fast and leaves ashes. Calm burns slowly and lights the way. It allows you to stay in difficult conversations without losing your center. It allows you to face challenges without being overwhelmed by them. Over time, this steadiness becomes your signature. People begin to feel it in your presence. They trust you not because you are loud, but because you are consistent. This does not mean you never feel anger, fear, or frustration. It means those emotions no longer rule you. They inform you, but they do not command you. You acknowledge them, learn from them, and then decide how to move forward. This is emotional leadership. And emotional leadership is one of the highest forms of power. Calm also protects your future. Many regrets are born in moments of emotional excess, words spoken in heat, actions taken in haste. When you remain calm, you spare yourself those regrets. You give yourself the gift of alignment between who you are and how you act. You become someone you can trust. As you cultivate calm, you may notice resistance from others. Some people are uncomfortable around those they cannot provoke. Your calm may feel threatening to those who rely on chaos to feel in control. Let it be. Your responsibility is not to manage their discomfort, but to remain true to your peace. Over time, calm becomes less of an effort and more of a state. You respond rather than react. You observe rather than absorb. You move through the world with a steady heart and a clear mind. Life still brings challenges, but you meet them differently now. You meet them with presence, with patience, with power. And in this way, calm becomes your crown. Not something you wear to impress, but something you live in every day. It is the quiet proof that you have grown, that you have learned, that you are no longer ruled by what happens to you, but guided by who you have chosen to become.